that you were my prince. Funny how life is always a big surprise. I thought the man of my dreams would have blue eyes, and I thought you'd be taller. I thought you'd be rich. I didn't think you'd be moody, and at times such a bitch. I thought you'd be brilliant, a real Einstein, but you'd rather watch TV than challenge my mind. I thought you'd be happy and never complain, but you're so neurotic, you make me feel sane. I dreamt about you, did you dream about me? You wore shining armor and you rescued me. Funny how dreams are not always as they seem. My handsome prince turned out to be more of a queen. You're not as romantic as I hoped you would be. You never buy flowers, at least not for me. We never go strolling or watch the sunset. We haven't made love outdoors since the night that we met. I thought you'd be athletic with muscles for days, but I guess it don't matter, 'cause I love you the same. But don't fear, my darling, 'cause you know it's you I adore. And I know you can't be blamed if at times you're a bore.
In the English language, most of us spell the word God with the same three letters, G-O-D. But our ideas about God vary immensely. To some, God is love. To others, God is judgment. To still others, an old man who no longer involves himself in the affairs of humanity. To still others, God may take on various incarnations within nature, perhaps a tree, a wild animal, a mountain, or a sunset. Or if these are not actually God, they serve to reveal something about God. Yet there is never enough revealed for any of us to get a complete picture. Nevertheless, we all seem to realize a need to respond to this undefinable person. For myself, I know God is wise, that God is always present, and that God is love. The rest I'm content to discover a little at a time. In this alone, I find sufficient reason to respond with love also. I'm sometimes asked why I chose to be a nun, but I'm not sure it was entirely my choice. I mean, to me, life is a continually unfolding picture, an endless story, and no one knows just exactly how it is supposed to be. It's a complicated dance between two mysterious partners. The one may be called destiny or fate, and the other, I believe, is the freedom of personal choice. As my life unfolds, I find myself at various turning points, and in simply trying to do what seems good and wise and best, I end up where I never imagined I'd be. Perhaps another way to put it is that as much as I discover and find my life, it discovers and finds me. Or perhaps it is God who finds us as we are in the process of finding God. To return to the question of my becoming a nun, the first thing to recognize is that I don't believe that sexism of any kind has any legitimate place in true and good spirituality. It is not a question of gender, but of devotion. If we encourage women to respond if God calls them to some sort of priesthood, and I believe we should, then we must also encourage men to respond if God calls them to demonstrate a new way to be a nun. So much of the way we think and live is nothing more than cultural programming. True spirituality must transcend culture. We must become more aware if we are to grow and become whole persons. Too often it is we in our foolishness who are really trying to play God, creating and shaping and defining God according to our own limited understandings and perceptions, and according to our own image, trying to control much more than is wise for us to control. I'm told that God knows the future, and that nothing is a surprise to God, who had even planned exactly the way things would be before the world was even begun. I'm skeptical. That extreme of determinism seems incongruous with all the creativity required to even imagine the earth in all its limitless detail, diversity, and beauty. How can one be truly creative without growth and discovery? Without a certain amount of questioning, of not knowing for sure? In my own spiritual growth, I've often come to places, or rather times, when I was unsure of what to do or pursue next. I often chose to begin the searching that always accompanies these times with the question, who are you, God? And in light of that, who am I? The tentative answers I discovered differed from time to time, but always had far-reaching implications. With me to continue this discussion, so that we may hopefully all learn and grow in some way, is my good friend, Benediccia. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. We were discussing the relationship of spirituality and life the other day, and you expressed an opinion that people often err on one side or the other.
I think it's a problem of so many people are wrapped up in the day-to-day life that spirituality, which many of them think of as being what you do on Sundays at church, the rest of the time is sort of left in a drawer someplace. And on the other hand, there are those people to whom spirituality is so important that the rest of their lives is nothing. They're always, they're so busy looking up to find God that they keep tripping over things right in front of them. I think it's a problem. I think spirituality needs to be not just something you do on Sunday, not something that you consciously devote all of your waking hours and most of your sleeping hours to. I think it's got to be something that permeates your life. It's a part of it. It is not one of those separate pieces. It's not something you do like lubing the car every 3 months or something like that.
A more integrated life.
Yes. I think it's something that when you get up in the morning and you look out the window and you're watching the sun come up, that should be part of your spirituality. When you're standing in the kitchen, cleaning up vegetables, getting ready for a dinner party or something, you should be aware of the absolute wonder of what you have in front of you. I mean, these things all started from little seeds, and they've grown into something amazing that feeds you, that keeps life in you.
I suppose that too many of us we see these things every single day and we go, come on, it's a potato. And yet, to be aware of going from virtually nothing to a pound of potatoes from a single plant.
Sure.
I mean, in one sense, our science has explained so many things, and yet the more answers we have, the more questions we find.
But isn't that wonderful? Isn't that fun? It means that we'll never run out of things to think about, things to do, things that will challenge us. There's always something else. I think one of the saddest times in history I ever read about was a short period, maybe a generation or so, where the great thinkers of the time were writing, everything has been discovered, everything has been done, the world has been completely explored. This is about 1700 something or other. Look where we have gone from there. Isn't it amazing?
Interesting thing is that they actually believed it.
Yes. Yes. And they were looking for the end of the century because they thought the world would end then. And this was fine because everything had been done. There was nothing left. There was nothing new. Of course there's something new. There's always something new. Even if we finish discovering the entire physical universe, there's always us. Aren't we amazing?
And I do think it will be a long time before, when we say us, if nothing else, we come right back to the unfathomable mystery of life. It's the one thing that with all our science and technology, we can't duplicate. Yet.
I think we will duplicate life, but I always wonder, when you talk about life, what are you actually referring to? And especially when you're talking about people, we're talking about more than just a bunch of chemistry that walks around on two legs. There's much more to it than that. And to get back to the problem of spirituality and everyday life, practicality, we have the problem of people are starved for the things that make up our spirituality. And I'm not talking about going to church, please. Some people, many people, that's where their spirituality can be received. That's where they find it. At least it's a good start. But I think more than that, spirituality is that sense of self and that sense of others, that I can step in your shoes. I can, even though I don't live your life, I'm not you. If there is even the minimum amount of communication between us, I can understand who you are and why you are the way you are. And you can do the same for me if you want to. And I think the saddest thing in the world are those people who are so afraid that they can't even get that close to somebody else. They can't ask the questions. They cannot even make the attempt to find out, why is that person different from me? And what good is it?
I guess I don't find it threatening because I realize that no matter how different that person is, I still have the freedom to be myself. There's nothing in the existence of another person that compels me to emulate them.
But isn't it frightening? I mean, these are people I understand. Mm-hmm. Isn't it frightening to be sitting here with the belief that the world is a horrible place and that all you're doing is your best to get through it so that you can go to someplace better? Wouldn't it be frightening to see other people around you who don't believe that way? Because that means you may be wrong. And that's a frightening thought, because it means you may have to think about your life, you may have to change it. How dreadful. Not really.
How necessary. But yes, that does bring up a very good point. The suggestion that you might be wrong about something, I'm sure is intimidating to people. I guess I trust that God has given me enough presence of mind that even if I do make a mistake, there will be some way to to amend things,
Yeah.
some way to respond to it in a positive way. I guess I trust that because I believe, because God exists, according to my belief, obviously, because God exists, there is no situation that I will ever face that has no redemptive possibility.
Oh, I think it goes farther than that. What makes you think that there is a being sitting up there who is watching severely every move you make and who's going to blast you with a bolt of lightning if you make even that much of a mistake? I don't think he cares. Not that he doesn't care. I think he cares very much, or she, or it, or whatever. But if there is someone up there watching, I don't think it's a matter of wanting to manipulate every move you make.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is...
Well, that would not be loving.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, look what you do for kids, okay? There are certain things, especially when they're younger, you don't allow them to do. You don't. You
'Cause you
don't
know they're
put them in-
dangerous.
Yeah, you don't put them in that situation, and at that age, at that size, at that coordination, it isn't good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So you try and keep them away from that kind of stuff, but you also try and be loving about it, and you say, this isn't good for you, and when you get older, you'll understand. And maybe even when you're older still than that, you will be allowed to do whatever. You know, like driving a car. You don't put a 3-year-old behind a car and take him out on the highway. You don't do that. But when they're old enough, tall enough, have good enough of coordination, and their brains have developed enough,
Mm-hmm.
then you can let them do those sorts of things. But there's that intermediate period, and I think that's where the human race is at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
where
It's a lot of learning and
little-
growing to do yet.
Yeah, we're a little too old to be prevented from doing things, but we're a little too young to really be able to understand all of the consequences of everything that we do. You know, individually as adults, one of the things that makes us adults is the ability to think of an action and understand, not just know, but understand internally the consequences we are going to have to face, good or bad. But I think the human race as a whole is a little bit younger than that. Sort of early teenager, you know? You want to get out and explore, you want to go do things, but your interests sometimes sort of are outstripping your abilities, your knowledge, your...
And perhaps like a teenager, I know when I was a teenager, it seemed whatever I was interested in at that moment, I would focus 100% of my energies on. And if I wanted something different a month later, well, I forgot that other thing, and now I'm here. And, you know, perhaps this relates to what we're talking about spirituality and life, that there are some people who get so preoccupied with establishing a life. I want the house, the car, the family, the good career, and the bank account, and then we'll have that all taken care of.
And
then they
otherwise, leave me alone.
yeah, and then they find out that, well, no, I also have to include this area in my life. And so after they've been spending all this time and energy running after money, suddenly they want to run after relationships. And then maybe they want to run after spirituality. And somehow, I don't know, I'm glad I survived my teenage years. I don't know how I did. But I'm glad I survived them, because somehow you come to a point of being an adult and understanding that all these things have a place, and that as you mature, you need to come to a place in your life, a point in your growth, where you don't have to be obsessive anymore. It's not like something means success or failure in and of itself. It becomes a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to grow, a lot of different things to explore, and you suddenly realize that this learning you're going through, this giant classroom, is not being graded on a pass-fail basis.
Not only that, but failing doesn't mean you're a failure. It simply means you didn't succeed. It's not that big a deal. You remember being a teenager. You remember what it was like when you really wanted to do something well, you'd never done it before, and it was the kind of thing that took practice, like maybe jumping off a high board. Okay?
We're
What would
talking about
happen
that.
the first time you did it if you had never been in the swimming pool before? You would hurt yourself very badly. But that does
guess
not
so.
make you a failure. It simply means you haven't done all of the preliminaries, and you don't have the knowledge, you don't have anything that you need to make that first dive a success.
I know there are people who believe that God runs things on a pass-fail basis, and I wish to respect them, and yet at the same time, I'm not sure that there's anything that would qualify as a good basis for pass-fail.
First, you have to know what it is that this deity wants of you.
I'm aware, or at least to me, I'm aware of a transcendent person, someone who transcends all my definitions of maleness and femaleness and personhood, and yet I know, in some sense, for me, God is a person. And I guess one of the most interesting things about it is, as the theme we keep hitting on here, that there's the potential for limitless growth, because there's always something new to discover. There's always
There's always more. There's always a challenge.
Always more.
Isn't that wonderful?
I think so.
We'll never run out. We will never reach an end.
Perhaps that might be closer to what the analogy of the water life was the water of life was talking about. There was a story in the Bible, for example, where Jesus met a Samaritan woman at the well and was talking about a spring of water that, when you come to a relationship with God, it becomes a spring of the water of life within you that just never stops. And she confused it with physical water and saying, well, give me this well so then I won't have to come out here in the heat of the sun and drop my bucket in the well. And well, that wasn't what he was talking about, but in comparing this not knowing to being the water of life instead of being a dark room full of specters, to begin to see our questions as something positive, as something that keeps us alive. And in a sense, when we have too many answers and not enough questions, spiritually, I think we begin to die.
Sure, because the challenge has gone away. What's left for us? But I think also we run into the problem of there are too many people out there who are positive that somebody else knows the right way. And that
They're
all they
willing
have
to
to do is find the person who has the right way and follow them. And because they haven't put any real effort, any real thinking into what it is that they're looking for, one of the things that they have missed completely is there isn't one way. There aren't even just two ways. There are as many ways or more than there are people. And I say or more because I don't believe that you have to say, at that age where you reach the ability to use critical thinking, I don't think you reach a point where you can say, oh, this is the way, and this is the way I shall take for the rest of my life. I don't think so. I think the
very
way you
essence
may
of
take...
life is growth and change.
Sure.
And if everything changes, how could you proceed in the same way?
Besides, I think, if you're following the way, I think the way goes up and down over hills, and it goes around little landmarks, and I think there are a lot of occasions where standing back, you've seen highways like this. It looks like the highway goes right there, but when you drive it, buried down in that hollow where you can't see, it takes this dip, it goes off a couple of side roads, and then it comes back up so it only looks like it's a straight road. And down in that hollow where you were following it through all of those other twists and turns, there are other roads going off in all directions. And okay, granted, maybe you're in a big hurry to reach the end of the road. I'm not. But if you're not in a hurry, wouldn't it be fun to explore some of these others too, even if they turn out to be not your road?
At the very least, you'd have a broader understanding of the map.
Yes. And you would have a better understanding of the other people who are traveling at least the same general direction that you are.
The point being that because of our unique ways of looking at and understanding things, each of us will have a different insight concerning any experience, anything in nature, any particular point
Yeah.
to share
But-
with others.
But the more we pursue it as the joyful purpose of our lives, rather than something that's being forced on us, we're stuck with it, there's nothing else we can do about it, the better off we're going to be, because the more we will get out of it. Because it won't just be an insight that somebody has pounded into our heads and we're stuck with it. It will be something that we have pursued as a child pursues a butterfly.
Mhm.
And when they finally catch it, they can look at it and examine all the wonderful colors and structures. It's beautiful.
And it will also be our life,
Mhm.
you know, and I take pride, I guess, in those days when I can look at a sunset or look in the mirror at the end of the day or go out after supper and look up at the stars and be able to smile and say, today I lived.
Mhm. And I think that's even...
Thank you for
that's
being
even-
with us. We're
Oh.
running a bit out of time here, I'm afraid, so we need to wind up. But I do thank you for being with us and look forward to having some chats with you on the show here again.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.